with another identity. I'm now Beth Wynstra. So you could call me that. As you know, Beth was unable to be here. Can you hear me all right without the mic? You sure? Because it's kind of insulting when a theater director needs a microphone. You know, it just doesn't look good. So I'm going to, these are Beth, as I think most of you know, and she gave an excellent talk this morning, was the dramaturg for the production that we're going to see in a few minutes of The First Man. And she prepared these remarks, and I've been asked to read them to you. In 1922, the year The First Man was first produced, was an interesting time indeed. 1922, the year The First Man was first produced, was an interesting time indeed. The play, as you will soon see, focuses on the Jasons, a family who is dealing and not dealing well with all kinds of new societal ideas swirling about in regard to women, marriage, employment, and gender roles. As much as certain characters in the play attempt to evolve their thinking to more modern understandings, long-held and cultural beliefs become hard to break. I see the Jasons then as symbolic of so many Americans. I like this play because I think it reveals a tension very much alive and well in our world today. A yearning for the new and the different, yet an inability to break with what is known and familiar. Eric, referring to Eric, is Eric here? The director, it's probably with his cast. Eric, the director of The First Man, whom you will meet, and I are very interested in notions of evolution in The First Man, both as a subject connected to what the character of Kurt Jason studies as an anthropologist, and as a larger theme in the play. O'Neill was writing The First Man as a literary movement called naturalism was taking hold in this country. Naturalism was largely inspired by Darwin's theories of evolution and his ideas of survival of the fittest, which were revolutionary in the early part of the 20th century. Naturalist writers such as Theodore Dreiser or Stephen Crane tend to see human beings as higher animals lacking free will, their lives determined by natural forces of heredity and environment, and by basic drives over which they have no control and do not fully comprehend. Thus, in works of naturalism, there are characters who believe they have free will and autonomy, but ultimately fall victim to elements they could never control. Naturalist writers like O'Neill then ask us as readers and audience members to think critically about some of the great myths promoted in America. This is a place where anyone can rise above where they came from, or that a person can create for him, her, their self, a completely different life from the one in which they were raised. In other words, naturalism as a literary movement is skeptical about the tenets of the American dream. Eric and I have discussed strong naturalistic elements in The First Man, where it becomes very difficult for characters to evolve or to fully reject or move away from where they came. You will see in Eric's production a harkening back to Greek theater elements, particularly with the Jason family operating as a kind of chorus. This chorus is meant to symbolize societal norms or the way things have always been. Thus, you will notice tensions between Kurt's ambitions for a different kind of life versus what the group deems is the appropriate way to behave and live. You will notice other characters' struggles with a set of ideas of how things should be done. The Jason family grafts an identity onto Martha, that is Kurt's wife, and the character of Bigelow, Kurt's friend. They see Martha as a heathen from the West with unorthodox ideas. What the family/chorus fails to do is recognize or empathize with Martha's context, what it must be like to be a new person in the community, how the tragedy of losing 2 children many years ago might have shaped her, and what it must be like to be heavily involved in anthropological research. Similarly, past mistakes made by Bigelow, the friend, means he cannot ever change in the eyes of his family / chorus. Even Bigelow's actions as a loving, devoted father does not shake the cemented ideas of him as a philanderer and womanizer. This play shows the disastrous effects of not approaching individuals with empathy and with a full accounting of their context, their lived experiences. My initial interest in The First Man was the marital relationship between Kurt and Martha. This is a couple who are devoted to one another and who love one another deeply. When we first encounter them, they are seemingly partners in every sense, partners in love, partners in research and work, and partners in a marriage that is definitely different than the more conventional ones that surround them in the town of Bridgetown. Those of you who know O'Neill's play Welded will see a familiar dynamic in The First Man, a couple trying to be modern and bucking societal expectations and gender roles in a marriage only to find that such a partnership is difficult to uphold. In The First Man, the difficulty comes when Martha, who had agreed to a pact the couple devised, namely not to have any more children, does a very human thing. She changes her mind. She is pregnant, and even more so, she is overjoyed about the news. The partnership Kurt thought he understood and could uphold, and that frankly benefited him and his work and research, shifts in an instant. Martha's decision to alter her path has powerful ramifications indeed. Martha is very attuned to the change of dynamic in the marriage due to her veering away from what the couple initially agreed to. She says, in my mind, some of the most beautiful lines about love and partnership in any of O'Neill's plays. Quote, "We must, both of us, relearn to love and respect what we have become." Her notions that a couple actually grows and changes over the course of a marriage is actually pretty revolutionary. Many of O'Neill's characters, not to mention many people off the stage at the first part of the 20th century, would find this idea of evolving in a partnership pretty foreign. An adherence to certain roles and set expectations for marriage espoused by characters on the stage and marital advice givers off seems the antithesis of growth and change of partners. I also see in Martha's quote very contemporary thinking. The notion of evolving or becoming has become a big part of how we now think about and discuss relationships and our own life narratives. That word becoming, of course, made me think of Michelle Obama's autobiography. And speaking of Michelle Obama, she recently posted on Instagram a promotion of her new book. In the post, she described the dynamics of marriage. Quote, "But here's the thing, our marriage has never been perfectly 50-50. One of us is always needing more or giving more. We have to be willing to listen to each other honestly and without defensiveness. Only then can we evolve together." Evolve together. An idea that Martha Jason in 1922 was asking for, but one the society in which she was living, and perhaps the society in which we are still living, is not always ready to accommodate. Thank you.